Luigi is on trial as really the main suspect in the killing of Brian Thompson. And Brian Thompson is the CEO of United Healthcare, for those that don't know or live under a rock for some reason. And what's really interesting is that Luigi is being hailed as almost like a modern day hero for a lot of people. And this is because of really, most would say, a system of corruption with, being able to kind of have a system around the idea of profit off of, sickness. And really Brian Thompson being a figurehead for this corrupt system. But recently, New York prosecutors have they've decided to use terrorism laws, or a terrorism law, in the charges against Luigi. And this may come to a surprise to some people in the public, and but it's really in step with the trend that the government has been leaning toward, right? And when it comes to this trend, it can be argued that the government no longer serves the interest of the general populace, but of the wealthy elite. And in terms of this idea, this is kind of a result of really the degradation that a lot of us have kind of been experiencing. And I would like to really propose a protest of sorts. And in this protest, we will either whistle or make bird noises in the presence of those with power. And the idea is this gentleman, Vincent Bevins, wrote a book about mass protest, and in this book, someone defines mass protest as really the lower class yelling to the upper class, "We don't like this. You fix this." And given the lack of morality within our wealthy elite and our political and the people who fill our political offices, I find this simply unacceptable, as I imagine many of you will as well. But in terms of this particular protest, this idea is to come with a list of demands. And in terms of this particular list of demands, it's 13 demands, and one is the disclosure of really medical communities and medical industry to make a case against universal health care, and a case that is kind of mediated by people within, or people that have countries, leaders in countries, or medical leaders from countries with universal health care. And that is, as well as, I'm not sure if there are any other if there are any other countries that do what we do to our populace, but well, it has to be fair in terms of this particular idea of there has to be a fair representation, and the idea of really corporations being able to influence this with false research in any case should be a criminal act and really judged as such. Two, the release of Epstein's list with what I recommend as Wittney Webb to lead a committee that oversees this release, and that's I think in a society now, I think there's I looked into this, and there seems to be a formal statement or investigation that has taken place behind the death of Jeffrey Epstein, and that is a statement to where it does appear that this organization has lost a tremendous amount of credibility in terms of putting that stamp there. And in this particular committee, in terms of this list in general, a lot of things I imagine will come behind it, and we'll deal with that as it comes up. But the being able to essentially have this list not released is a stain. It's a stain on our record and our particular idea of justice in general, and I don't think we survive that. Number 3, we got an official investigation into the lack of affordable housing and the acquisition of housing in terms of ownership by corporations, and how there has to be an actual understanding of how it's come to be to where there is a lack of affordable housing for the general populace and a lot of us now. For an official review into the general land acquisition with immediate action to be held against corporation entities that may be holding this land in interests that are opposed to the local communities and the local people in those lands. That is, if there is a significant amount of land owned by a small number of people, that's going to simply have to be disclosed, and essentially we're going to have to really work out what that means in terms of land ownership in general, and really what I'm really hoping for is to impose restrictions on these people that lead to less land acquisition by fewer people. For the FDA, and the FDA has to essentially have a formal investigation committee, and I'm aware of the incoming administration and their ability to kind of grasp their statements against the current running of the FDA and how things will be run. And I think that there can definitely be talk of how Kennedy fits into this investigation in general, and I do think that there should be talk around how Kennedy fits in this investigation in general. But one thing that's for sure is if it is found to be that Kennedy holds interests that are in opposition to fixing the FDA, then that has to essentially be disclosed and addressed to where the power that Kennedy would hold in this terms of investigation and addressing this problem, I expect to really be a matter of understanding that there are chances of interest outside of the general FDA in terms of the repair and the renovation of what we call the FDA. I personally recommend on this council Mike Mutzel. He's a YouTuber, and I think he genuinely seems like wants to promote good health amongst the general populace. Number 6. This is going to be an official investigation into the relationship between Google and the government. I know the case for really what's happening with Google now is something that has to kind of come into play. But being realistic about really the state of really our society right now, I think there has to be something that is really done to clamp down on the relationship in terms of the revolving door situation between these particularly Google and the government. And of course, the revolving door situation exists in a lot of different industries, but right here in particular. Number 8, number 7. Number 7. This is an investigation into general government overreach and spying, and this right here needs to be done. Specifically, this is in terms of what's taken place. There is a gentleman who is going into government spying. Byron Tau, that is his name, and he goes into a particular he goes into a lot of really what's happening behind the scenes in terms of what happens with our data, and how our government is actually one of the biggest, one of the largest customers, I would say, on this market for our data. And so much so to where they're now facing like a lot of situations to where they're buying fake data from people because there's a market for fake data. And this is something that I really it's become it's very much a problem in terms of the idea of the overreach and the spying that the government has access and is capable of. Whether we are seeing the consequences of those actions, I think, is something that we really don't necessarily see, but it does appear that there has to essentially be a rein in, or that there has to be an official investigation into how things are done, and with a lot of these marketers. For this particular investigation committee, I do recommend Byron Tau. I recommend Naomi Brokwell from YouTube. Very knowledgeable, someone who I view as very knowledgeable and willing and wanting to help in terms of privacy and information, and how we can reclaim our privacy and information. And also Wittney Webb as well. I do recommend Wittney Webb on this investigation, or on this committee as well, because of really the overlap in terms of what Wittney Webb has seen, and the insight that she can provide. Number 8, I do recommend an investigation into the relationship between mainstream media and the government. So in terms of what's the way things are done now, there's a stark understanding that I think a lot of our government has had to reach and react to, and has led to what we're living now. Because in the release of government, in the government leak, Daniel Ellsberg released the Pentagon Papers, and there was no serious pushback in terms of what happened back then. And that was in regard to the Vietnam War and the lessons, and the realistic understanding, outlook of people on the ground, and how they formulated, or the realistic outlook from what the Vietnam War was, in terms of relaying that information to the president, and essentially the president not relaying a sufficient analysis to the general public, and essentially lying to them in a lot of cases in terms of the administration. And that didn't take place with, you have Julian Assange, and he is not a government whistleblower. Daniel was someone who worked with the government. Julian Assange did not. He simply published the information. People have not realized just how far we've come to actually go after people who publish the information. Nowadays, I think there was a government release. First off, Julian Assange had to plead guilty, and that's simply unacceptable, and definitely a symptom of a system that has gone completely that has swayed from its path. And this is in terms of fixing that particular mark. I think it's definitely something that we need to do, and it's definitely a precedence that we need to make in terms of for people in the future, when whistleblowers do come out in the future. Definitely something. Now, when it comes down to the leak after the arrest, and between the arrest and the freeing of Julian Assange, there was a situation to where there was a press conference, and every quote unquote news organization was asking, how are you going to protect the public from this information, and not necessarily holding the government accountable for what was found in those leaks. And this is in terms of the shift. There was a point in time to where there were journalists, investigators asking tough questions at those press conferences. And I do think we need to understand that we're not in that time period anymore, and understand why that is. Because they're respectable reporters that wouldn't go there. They just wouldn't be allowed in. They wouldn't have their press credentials there. It's very much worrisome and telling about where we're at now. and definitely worthy of an investigation in general. Number 9, an investigation into our educational system and our compulsory education. And the idea is there needs to be an acknowledgement of the overwhelming failure of our compulsory education in terms of creating a healthy and successful individual in today's society. And this investigation needs to really address compulsory education, of course, but also I imagine that to certainly bleed out into the atmosphere and the atmosphere that we have around colleges in general, and what needs to take place in terms of repairing what we have here. And number 10, an official investigation to uncover the components of our military-industrial complex, and what makes that a thing, and what components make up the military-industrial complex in terms of what does arise, in terms of what is the incentive, where are those incentives, and how do we address those and really rein in a lot of these people. Well aware that this is a very quote-unquote complex matter. And I will say, I think Bruce Lee said it best. Not Bruce Lee. Einstein said it best. If you can't explain it simply, then you shouldn't be. Then you probably don't understand it well enough. And the idea is, if you do want to throw up your hands and say that this is too complex of a matter, then give me someone, or then we'll simply find someone smarter who is able to. And this is very, very much something that is alive and well, and something that needs to be addressed. Number 11, an official investigation between the relationship between our government and Wallstreet. And this is obvious for a lot of reasons, but there's definitely something that is the incentive that a lot of our politicians are kind of yielding to in order to kind of make way for Wall Street is insane in a lot of cases. And for this particular investigation and this committee, I'd recommend Gretchen Morgenson. And she wrote a book recently, highly recommended. These Are the Plunderers. I want to say These Are the Plunderers. And that's something that is kind of reminiscent of kind of the bailout that we've given. And there was also kind of was Occupy Wall Street was apparently something that, as an American, I didn't realize just how far and how much that meant to the rest of the world to see that. But I do expect us to have and develop a stronger understanding there. Number 11, the disclosure of mainstream news disclosure of funding of mainstream news. And this is kind of in terms of the top 5 funders or the sources of funding, what I'd like to see personally would be, while you guys are kind of giving your, presenting the quote-unquote news to the rest of the public, you have to essentially advertise these particular elements of who are the main 5 sources of funding for your particular news station or this particular news segment. Definitely something that I feel like would give people an accurate understanding of where you guys come from in the quote-unquote mainstream news. Also, this is 13. This is all public representatives. This is similar to 12, but all public representatives must wear insignia according to the funding that they receive when they make public statements. So every suit that is worn by politicians or political, representatives in general, if you look at the when you look at a NASCAR, they should be dressed the same way we dress NASCAR race, NASCAR race car or racers, right? So when they come out and they wear their particular uniform, it has their sources of funding or their advertising, their advertisers, kind of stitched on their uniform. When you come out and you talk in terms of the politicians and political representatives, that needs to be done as well. And when it comes down to this particular protest and these particular investigations and the recommendations, I think this is a start. I don't think that this is comprehensive, and that kind of be silly in a 30-minute clip in any way, shape, or form. But I do believe that this is a good start in terms of how things can bleed out from here. And I am by no means calling every single public representative that we have evil or corrupt. But in terms of the system that we do have, it is laughable in a lot of our situations to where we're at now. And we're looking at this is the degradation of society. And this protest is made in order to repair our society and essentially avoid the cost of any type of chaos ensuing. Now, in terms of how these investigations and these demands are met, I expect there to be a component of kind of really the social media platforms that a lot of us are currently engaged with on a regular basis. I expect these particular investigations to get equal, if not more, lenience or more presence, equal or more presence than was given in terms of the presidential elections. And this particular idea of a renovation in general, this is something that I believe will take form and take shape as it rolls out. But I do expect there to be a significant collaboration between the findings and these social media platforms to where people, and this gets the exposure that it really deserves in terms of what happens and what's going to take place. And if there is a successful protest and these demands are essentially come into play in any way, shape, or form. Also, when it comes down to these particular committees, I am not in any way not in any way saying that making recommendations for full committees. I do expect people from the outside in terms of more people to formulate these committees, but when it comes down to intentional withholding of interest, conflicting interests between, these persons and these committees, if there is withholding of information of conflicting interest, I expect that to be kind of treated as a criminal offense. And something that is, in terms of the concept, I do believe that we have very smart people in the government. So I do expect these blanks to be filled in accordingly. This idea of being able to say, the government isn't that competent in a lot of these areas, I think we need to really, really lose that idea and that understanding that we've made up in a lot of these cases. And when it comes down to people who join these committees simply to really derail what's going on, that is also something that I expect to be, when it's found that they have conflicting interests, I really, in terms of, I would like to see these guys really face real consequences. Hopefully, I expect legal consequences to follow suit. And this is this whole idea, I think, is really reminiscent of the Frank Church Committee and what took place with Frank Church reeling in the CIA and the FBI. I expect that to really be, in terms of this whole thing kind of bridges out from that understanding of, what's going to happen, what needs to happen. And when it comes down to the health care, I do expect Bernie Sanders to also be a part of this particular committee. But it needs to be understood the same way that we understand with, with Kennedy. We are not going to be blind to the idea that you may have conflicting interests with a lot of what goes on. And I think that needs to be stated in the formulation of this committee, how much power these people have in these committees, and really how we go about addressing what needs to be addressed to move forward. In any case, please like and share, and also that like I said, when it comes down to the protest, whistle or bird noises, I think are a good signifier, or a good way to let the people know. Let the representatives know that they are being watched, and there is expectation in some way, shape, or form. In any case, thank you for listening.
We're those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.